One of the things that gets me wound up, and well, let's face it, there's a lot of things, just listen to my podcast. But one of the things that gets me wound up is when people make the blanket statement that it's all about relationships. They say this a lot in sales, which is probably why it drives me nuts, because it's only partially true. It's a statement made to say that everything I'm doing is right because what I'm doing is working on the relationship. But the whole reason you work on a relationship and the reason you want to establish relationships is for an outcome. What's the outcome you want in establishing a relationship, particularly in sales? There's only one outcome. You want to control the narrative. And having a relationship gives you the leeway and permission to attempt to control the narrative. And if you can't control the narrative, you didn't have a relationship. Then nobody's going to trust you. All right. That's the whole point. So don't tell me it's all about relationships. Tell me what you're going to do with that relationship.
Welcome to your weekly dose of uncommon sense, helpful insights, and tough love. I'm your host, Tom Stimson. The Intentional Success Podcast comes to you through the generous support of Mertz Crew.
Mertz Crew helps top AV companies book quality AV freelancers. Your choice, your rates. We handle contracts, insurance, and payments. You save time, cost, and reduce risk. Start today at mertzcrew.com.
Now on to the show.
So controlling the narrative is a very important concept in business. I'm not going to tell you how to conduct it in life. I've got enough problems at home. I'm not going to do that. But in business, controlling the narrative is a very important part of what we do, right? There's three areas where this manifests. It manifests in sales, it manifests in day-to-day management, and controlling the narrative manifests at the end of your career in your exit strategy and succession planning. We want to control the narrative as much as we possibly can. Now, that doesn't mean we can't modify the narrative, because let's talk about what it actually means to control the narrative. So controlling the narrative is, number one, helping the person or persons that you're dealing with know what to expect. We're about to engage into something, whether it's a meeting, a conversation, a project together. Here's what you need to expect. Okay. Controlling the narrative means that you're going to make sure they understand when is the right time to ask a question. Here's a great opportunity to ask a question. When is a good time, or what's the circumstance that would cause you to modify what it is that we're working on together? And what is the next step after we complete this? So once we've completed this task or journey, here's what happens next. So we're forward looking, but it's not part of the engagement. It's not part of the project or the conversation. It's the next conversation. And then controlling the narrative means that once you get to that point, you repeat. So now you're moving on to the next stage of the narrative. Now, let's think about how this works in sales. I always tell you that your job in sales is not to close the deal, is to book the next call. The deal will close itself. Okay? All you need to do is keep the conversation and book the next call. Now, you may be booking the next call to confirm the deal, okay, because now you've set the expectation. But let's think about how this works. So, hey, I've just called you. Hey, my name's Tom. I'm introducing my production company. I'm hoping you have 2 minutes to chat with me. You are the person that helps select the next vendor for your national sales meeting. Is that true? Yes, it is. Awesome. Great. I'm a company who does that work. I'd like to be involved in that process. If that's something you're interested about, I'd like to set up a call and bring the right team members there to tell you more about our business. Would that be okay? Well, no, I don't really have time to do that, or we start that process in October. Is it awesome? Okay. Can I talk to you in the middle of September so that we can set up the time to do that in October? Thank you very much. Great. So what I did was I created the expectation of what this call is about. Okay. I said, what would happen if we're successful in this call, which is the next call? And I gave you the opportunity to insert yourself or modify or ask questions. So this is every sales conversation. Okay. We want to control the narrative to get to the next point. Now, there's room in there to have longer conversations and to chat, and God help us do small talk if that's what you need to do, or if that's what the buyer needs to do. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is get to the next step. And if we force the next step on this call, we're probably trying to do too many things at once. in training, we call this overload. If we try and train, we're successful training points A, B, and C. Now we're going to move to point D. People need time to process A, B, and C. Sometimes they need time to process A. So if we take this in smaller bites, we move it forward. Let's apply this to management. Controlling the narrative in management, again, is here's what to expect. Here's when you should ask a question. Here's when you should modify something or make a change. And this is what it looks like when you're finished. And here's what we will do afterwards. Right? So if whether this is defining a project, a task, or creating a thinking exercise, you're going to manage the expectations for the team, saying, this is what I expect it to look like when you're done. Okay? You can use whatever process seems appropriate. However, if you encounter this circumstance, I ask that you do this thing. In other words, I've created an exception that has to be followed. Or I can say, when you encounter this, you can choose between A and B, or you can come ask me. Or I can say, when you get to this point, you can choose to modify it this way if that's appropriate, or modify it that way. So again, I've created expectations for the outcome. I've given them a rubric for either asking a questions, making a decision, or getting help, right? And then I've reminded them what it looks like when we're done, and say, after we complete this, we will then be able to do that. So once this task is completed, hopefully they will come back to me. I will set them up with the next task or expectation, go through the same process, and repeat. For those of you who work on show site, you will find your best project managers and team leads do this all the time. I want you to run this cable down, and I want you to straighten it out. If you find that the cable is crossing over each other, stop and go back to the beginning and resort it out. If you don't have enough cable to get to where you're going, come see me. Great. When you're done laying down this cable, then I'm going to come back and I'll show you how to dress it. Awesome. So we created an expectation. We gave them some rooms to make decisions along the way and things they would encounter, and off they go and do it. I control the narrative. Okay. Now, we've all worked with stagehands who wants to tell you exactly how they're going to do it. And it's like, you don't need to tell me that. Here's what I expect. I expect you to use what you know how to do. Lay the cable down. If you encounter this, do this. When you're done, come back and see me. Okay. We can take care of the know-it-alls in this process. The third manifestation of controlling the narrative that I think is very important for business owners in particular to understand is what to do at exit strategy. When you come to that point in your life where you're ready to sell the business, walk away from it and install new management, sell it to your employees, whatever it might be, install your offspring into leadership roles, you need to control the narrative. Now, when you're selling your business, the best way to control the narrative is to have your ducks in a row, have your information, your accounting, your data so well prepared that you exceed the expectations of the due diligence request in advance. Okay, you'll set them back on the heels. So now you're controlling the narrative. And if they say, hey, well, we'd like to see the numbers this way, you can then show them how those numbers are already there. Maybe they didn't see that tab or didn't see how to use it correctly. So now you're controlling the narrative. Okay? You're making people want to take over this company, do business with you, or whatever it might be. So there's always an opportunity to control the narrative, but it's all about being prepared, understanding the expectations that you have so that you can share those expectations with whoever you're working with, okay, and set up the next step. Remember, one bite at a time. Take this in small chunks, okay? Control the narrative, set up the next call, set up the next conversation, set up the next meeting. You've got this. Get out there, take control of some narrative. Thanks for listening.
If you liked this episode of the Intentional Success Podcast, please leave a review and don't forget to like and subscribe. This podcast has been brought to you by the helpful folks at Mertz Crew.